This is Heaven 610, WAGG Birmingham. It's time now for BizTalk, and here's Roy Williams.
Welcome to BizTalk with Roy Williams. I am so excited to have you joining us here today. Today's topics, I think, are something that is going to be of a lot of interest to listeners out there. First up, we're going to talk about the issue of cancer, a horrible disease that afflicts so many in our community. And it's a topic that I have written about a lot over the last couple of weeks. I am a reporter for a publication called The Hoover Sun and Village Living, and I've been writing about it's amazing how the Mountain Brook community has rallied behind 15-year-old Sid Ortiz, who is a cancer victim, and he's an LSU fan, and they've been putting up purple and gold ribbons in his memory, and just to support him and to let him know that they are praying for him. And joining me first up is a good friend of mine, Mr. French Forbes III, who is the executive director at the Deep South Cancer Foundation. And at the French and I Talk, we're going to have two lawyers with Corey Watson Law Firm who are going to share advice for people who are dealing with any type of issue in which you need a plaintiff's lawyer, from dealing with cancer or, accidents, etc. But first up, Mr. French Forbes III. Welcome, French.
Thank you, Roy. I appreciate you having me on.
For those of you who may be familiar with the Forbes name, this gentleman happens to be in the family that for over a century operated Forbes Piano, downtown Birmingham, and where else was it?
Actually, it was downtown Birmingham. We were in Montgomery, Mobile, Florence, Decatur, all over the state at one time.
And I know that company was it was originally founded in what year?
1889.
1889, operated for over a century before the family went on into other ventures. But first up, tell everybody a little bit, introduce yourselves and tell us a little bit about what the UAB Deep South Cancer Foundation is.
Sure. Yeah. So just briefly, as we closed out of the music business, Roy, we went into the home health care business for a while, and after about 3 years, sold that company. But it also, during that time, it was a period of time. It just really allowed me to kind of connect to a lot of patient care and some of the needs out there. And in particular, started doing a little bit of volunteer work with the Comprehensive Cancer Center down at UAB. And it really caught my interest because it was not just about breakthroughs in cancer research, but it was also a center for current cancer care, patient navigation in particular. And so after several months there, there was a need to, a particular need to continue funding a particular area that is growing in popularity because of its overwhelming success, and that's patient care navigation.
Tell, for those who don't know, what is patient care navigation? That's something that I've heard that term, but what does it mean?
Sure. Patient navigation itself is not new, but for the most part, what we know of navigation is either through a social worker or somebody that's connected with a hospital, that even a nurse that sometimes just going to supply additional information about the whole process, the epic journey of cancer itself. But Dr. Ed Partridge with UAB, who is the executive director of UAB Comprehensive Cancer Center, in his own practice years ago in South Alabama, had the need to really empower his patients with more information. And so he was not having enough nurses or people to be able to do that. He trained lay navigators to be able to do this, to supply additional information, to really give patients less anxiety, more comfort. Also, in just knowing, what to expect out of their treatments. What are they going to feel sick? If they do, what causes that? So,
now, for those who don't know, tell a little bit about the UAB Deep South Cancer Foundation. When it was founded, exactly what do y'all do?
Sure. So 3 years ago, it'll be 3 years in June of this year, UAB won a Medicare Medicaid Innovation Grant that was designed, it was a $15 million grant, and it was designed to take patient navigation into a whole new area. So it was a trial program. It was actually came out of TARP money, and so UAB was it took about 8 or 9 months to really get it up and going, but UAB also has along with it 12 additional cancer centers that are not UAB cancer centers, but they're associate hospitals. Because UAB is a National Cancer Institute, one of 41 in the United States. There's not one in the Deep South, so some of these other cancer centers are a part of that so that they can share information. They can use existing metrics that supply just overall information. They can share information about cancer treatment. So, but there's about 54 patient navigators in a 5-state region, 13 hospitals total, counting UAB. That program, the grant comes to an end in June. And although we've been given indication that Medicare will probably come back and fund a portion of that, it is the numbers that are starting to come out is that it's been overwhelmingly successful. So we want to see that continue without a gap in there. And so in doing so, we formed a foundation that is separate from UAB, but a part of UAB, similar to the Breast Cancer Foundation, that would be able to fund or continue to fund Patient Care Navigator, which the model was built for Medicare patients, but also we want to be able to extend that into our age group down to pediatrics. So as you discussed with this young gentleman and several other of the pediatric cases that are a little bit more well known to us in our community, having a navigator help you through the whole process of the cancer from the very beginning to the middle of your journey to sometimes making hard decisions in the very end, when nutritional needs, what the medication, how it's making you feel. So patient navigators they're available to their patients 24/7. There's no cost to them, but this is through UAB and through any of their cancer network hospitals.
It's interesting since I've been covering this case, and he's such a brave young man, Sid Ortiz in Mountain Brook this week, Magic Moments, and I went to a ceremony at Mountain Brook Junior High School where he found out that he's going to be a recipient of a Walking Dead experience. That's his favorite show, Walking Dead, and Magic Moments is paying for him to go and meet the cast, etc. And it really helped make his day. And he's such a brave young man, and I really have to give kudos to Mountain Brook for rallying behind not only him, but other cancer victims there. But I have a question. How prevalent is cancer among youth? Because there have been so many cases lately that are getting the news. How prevalent is cancer?
Well, I don't have the numbers for the state of Alabama. We know that it's getting more attention just because as cancer is some of the breakthrough cures are starting to come out, or treatments on there, it's getting more visibility. As far as I have to jump back into the Medicare side, 65 age and plus. Some of those, because the baby boomers are really moving into that aging piece, the chances of once you turn 65 getting cancer are fairly high because we're living longer. If you live to 90, the age of 90, the chances of acquiring some kind of cancer along that time are very high. So, and those are due to many obvious reasons and some that are less obvious. I mean,
I know a lot of times it can be issues like sometimes your diet I've been told can affect it, and And in obvious cases, there also can be things like asbestos, which I'm going to be talking to the lawyers about in a couple of minutes, about cancer related to things like asbestos.
Yeah, so I mean, obviously physical activity, the more physical activity you have, and our children, and some of these children that are developing sometimes a rare cancer, or sometimes not so rare, they may be in great physical shape. Their diet may be, right on target. There's just no, sometimes there's just no rhyme or reason why that appears.
Can some of it be genetic?
Absolutely.
I know I've heard cases where women have breast cancer and then their daughters can end up getting breast cancer.
Sure. Well, so UAB, a part of that too, part of Patient Care Connect, it is a form of treatment. It is a treatment that is here and available to the patients, currently. So it's not something that's far-fetched in the future into research, which we need those as well. But also, you mentioned, can it be in the genes? And UAB is in a very up-and-coming university for genomic research.
Tell us, for people who want to join this effort and help the UAB Cancer Foundation, tell about how they can join and how people can, even donate, etc.
Absolutely. So we're real excited right now because we have a big event that's going on right now that's called Cycliad, and the Birmingham community can be a part of that by going to the cycliad.com website. We have a big community event that will take place on May the 3rd. There'll be 3 events that day. There'll be, in the cycling world, what we call a metric century, which is 62 miles. Also a 10-mile ride around the city, kind of a tour of the city. And then also the last ride will be a children's ride. And they all begin and end at Railroad Park. The exciting piece about this is it not only involves this last day, but it's a 1,300-mile, sort of ambitious for our first year, event that will begin at Memorial Hospital in Chattanooga on April 10th. And over a period of 4 weekends, we've got a group of elite riders that will be riding the whole event each Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, beginning April 10th, and ending that last day at Railroad Park on May 3rd. So,
is there a website? How can people get information about all of this? Tell a little bit about that.
Yeah, so you go to cycliad.com, but again, we're really excited about this event because there never has been an event of this portion involving bikes in 5 states and 1,300 miles that has taken place. So, this is the first year. So we're really wanting the Birmingham community to jump in there and help support us because it's for a great cause, and again the one that we're really trying to get information out about. You don't have to be a cyclist either. The categories are dreamers, people who don't even bike. They can raise money and sharing their story of somebody else who has been dealing with cancer or some way that maybe it's affected their life. To virtual, we have both Lifetime Fitness and YMCA downtown that are both participating in spin events. That's our virtual category. And again, the community events are $35 for any of those events. And so that, again, that's the 10-miler, the 62-miler, and the kids' events, too, that take place. And everybody will get a really nice dry fit shirt and other goodies. And there'll be bands playing, all different types of activities that Sunday afternoon take place.
Do you have phone number information for people?
Yeah, there's no actual phone number, but we just urge people to go to the Cycliad site. So that's spelled CYCLIAD.com. We actually, Cayenne Creative came up with a whole new word for us for the event. And so when you Google that, you won't find any other Cycliads except for ours.
Yeah. Any other events you got coming up in coming weeks?
Well, and of course, in just 2.5 weeks or so, we'll begin this 1,300-mile challenge. And again, it's just it's not just to raise awareness and monies for patient navigation, but also to really give cancer a little bit more visibility. Mm-hmm. Some of the cures at each location, at each hospital that we stop at. There'll be a lot of support, celebrations, and things that go on each week. So we're really excited about that. So we're looking for volunteers as well for the Birmingham area. There's a big need for that. So there's so many different ways that you can get involved. So we just really urge you to go to that site. You can connect to us through email that way.
And you got the email out to the public again?
Absolutely.
Okay. Listen, anything else before we get ready to take a break?
I don't think so. I think this is, again, thank you for the opportunity to share more about UAB. And so, along with that, too, we really want to, just give, as you were talking about earlier, talk about some of the, We hope that you will continue to support us through that, and again, just great opportunities for the public to get involved, and so, and two, just to kind of give you a snapshot again of what the Deep South Cancer Foundation really supports. We really want to, number one, to continue the program that we've got going at UAB. Through UAB Health System, Cancer Community Network. We really want to expand that program to for all age groups. And within all the cancer network that we work with, there's currently a 70 active 70,000 active cancer patients within that group. So
you say 70,000?
70,000, yeah.
When you think about all you've done over your career, what does it feel to be involved in fighting something that is, obviously you have a lot of passion for this, but does it give you a sense of pride that you're able to help so many people?
Absolutely. And to be a part of, just quite frankly, the UAB team down there and to see their passion behind this, it's all about really finding, it's all about the patient, it's really helping them along this journey, and just love it. Just the people that you meet, not only that are cancer survivors, but are going through the whole piece of cancer, to the patient navigators themselves. When you talk to the patient navigators, that's where it lies. Those people are very special people.
Well, listen, thank you for being on the show, and I want to get you back on in a couple months so we can talk more about this issue of cancer. I'm very passionate about this issue because I've got family members that have dealt with breast cancer, and just thank you, French. And again, I just have to commend you for what you're doing.
Thank you, Roy. Appreciate it.
Listen, we're about to take a commercial break, and for those of you who need some legal advice,
is your well water
to let people know, by the way, if you do have any questions related to issues like been in an accident, you're involved in something that you think may fit one of these class actions that they talked about, or you're an asbestos victim or a cancer victim, the call-in number is 205-741-9244. Let me ask you about one of the cases that got a lot of news, which was the gas explosion in Pratt's Gate City. How long ago was that?
It was in December of 2013.
December 2013. Correct? Just tell everybody a little bit about that case. It was in the news a lot, and y'all's involvement.
Really, it was, and I'll share with you. We represent the family of a lady that was killed, and then several people that were injured in that case. I don't really want to expand too much. That is ongoing litigation, and I wouldn't feel right about talking too much about it. But generally, it was a case where an explosion occurred, and it killed our client and injured several others. And since that's ongoing...
Yeah, I understand. Well, we got plenty of other cases we can talk about. A couple of weeks ago, I know y'all represented some people with a plant explosion at Brent Industries in Bibb County.
Yes, sir. We represent the family of the young man that was killed, and that was just the week before last. And that case is so new that we really don't have all the facts yet. But we know this. Generally, I would tell you that when something like that happens, something went wrong. And we're going to do our level best to help that family recover what they're entitled to under the law.
Well, I know this other case is something that I remember about because I was a reporter at the time, and I remember how shocking it was. There was a Days Inn fire. Was it in Hoover?
It was in Hoover.
Off of 31, I think it was.
That's exactly right.
3 college girls got tragically killed, and it was such a shock to me because I remember it was 3 young African-American girls, and I can't remember what they were in town for, but I know y'all represented some of the victims. How did that case turn out?
Roy, that was actually 4 young ladies.
It was 4?
Yes, and let me share with you. I did work on that case, and that case has been resolved, so I can tell you a little bit more about it. These were 4 young ladies that were they went to school in Mississippi, and it was Martin Luther King Jr. weekend in 2010. And these 4 young ladies were all excellent students. They were freshmen in college, doing everything right. They made good grades. They were working on the weekends, typically. This weekend, they had planned to come to Birmingham and go shopping.
I remember.
For a nice 3-day weekend. These 4 young ladies had gone shopping out in Hoover that afternoon. It was late in the afternoon, and that time of year, as you know, late January. It was 2010, in fact. They had been shopping, and they came back to their hotel room. They were getting ready, and they were planning to go out to dinner. This is a situation that I have a really personal investment in because this is one of the rare cases where the clients did nothing at all to contribute to their deaths. So it personally motivated me to help these women as much as we could and their families.
And in this case, if I'm remembering correctly, it's sad and it's shocking what had happened, but it pointed out a lot of these hotels, I believe, didn't have proper. I mean, tell me about that. Sure. I can't remember it, but it made a difference. Their deaths were not in vain because of this tragedy.
It did. It was a perfect storm that lined up against these 4 young ladies. They were in their hotel room, and what had happened was the hotel didn't have a very good fire alarm system. It's an older building, a much older building, and unfortunately for them, what happened was the fire alarms were not working. And the construction was so old, it was sort of a grandfathered in construction. You can't build a hotel like this today. If you can imagine what I call sort of the front porch area, they were on the 2nd floor. The fire had started below them in the room next door. So if you can imagine an adjacent room, 1 floor down and 1 over. The wind happened to be blowing that night in the direction towards their room. And so when the fire had actually started a floor below, and a gentleman that worked there had an altar. He was an Indian.
Oh, yeah, I remember it now.
And he was worshiping his way, and what happened was his altar caught on fire. And whenever the front of the building caught on fire, it just created 30-foot flames in front of their door. When they first had knowledge of it, we're told that it was 1,500 degrees Fahrenheit and 30-foot flames. There was no escape, as most hotels are. The only way in and out was through the front. And so these 4 young ladies huddled up in the bathroom, and they were on the phone with a 911 operator who talked them through the whole sequence. And it's really tragic. I really feel like they felt like they could get out. That we thought that fire responders and emergency personnel would be there on the scene and rescue them at some point. And as we all know now, that didn't happen.
How did that case end up turning out?
It turned out it was a very successful result. As successful as something can be when you've lost your daughters. But these families recovered financially very, very well. And that's one of those things that's confidential about the amount.
Yeah, I understand that.
It was significant, Roy. It was, again, I want to emphasize, nothing could ever bring their daughters back, but it certainly was a successful resolution to a lawsuit.
Well, I know another topic that we want to talk about is Legionnaire's disease. Now, I'm not exactly sure what that is, so someone's got to tell me a little bit about that. And I know that your firm was representing some UAB hospital patients who came down with Legionnaire's disease. Tell everybody what Legionnaire's disease is and how that, talk about that.
Legionella is a bacteria that occurs typically in like a whirlpool situation or a water source. Sometimes it can be a cooling tower or an air conditioning unit. But what we know about it is it doesn't occur naturally. And so what that indicates to us is that someone committed what we call negligence, Roy. It's a breach of a duty owed to the public. And I'm going to try to make it a little more simple for your listeners. But if in society we owe each other a duty, and in this situation it would be to keep a cooling system clean, particularly in a hospital where people's health is more compromised. So they're there in the hospital anyway. A hospital should be on the highest order to try to protect someone. And again, I don't want to get too far into this, but we have ongoing cases, and we actually have cases in New York City, Legionnaire's disease cases.
Well, another thing is we're on to talk about is sexual abuse. And, what was shocking to me, I've heard horror stories about young men getting sexual abuse at summer camps and all. I mean, have you ever dealt with any cases like that?
We have, Roy, and let me share with you, a few years ago, probably the most famous situation we've ever heard of was the Jerry Sandusky case at Pennsylvania State University. Yeah. I think the harm there, one of the things that's unpreventable is what a single person does, what they do themselves acting as an individual. But what made this such a heinous situation is that when we learned of the situation, it was known that others knew of it and hid it. Yeah. And then that's where the civil aspect came in, because otherwise, Mr. Sandusky, as you know, is in prison today and will be, I believe his sentence was many life sentences for his crimes.
He'll never get out.
He'll never get out.
And he doesn't need to after something like that.
But even more difficult for me to understand is that somebody buried this information and helped cover it up. And so,
what gets me is the wife. You didn't know what your son is doing?
Right.
I mean, what your husband's doing with these little boys?
She didn't know, or if she did know, she denied it. Yes. So we help others in similar situations. One of the things we entrust our children to are summer camps and situations like this. And we know of many cases. We've represented individuals who were at summer camps or in a campsite setting, and what happened to them is equally as disturbing. Is they'd be molested, and it would be a parent's, as you know. It's the most fear any parent has. It's something like that to occur to a child.
Look, I'm a father of 2 children. And, I have a 15-year-old daughter, but I also have a 13-year-old son. You used to be that fathers felt you didn't have to worry about your boys. But nowadays, it seems like boys have been molested as much as girls.
There are predators everywhere. And what I would say is, one of the laws in Alabama, general law, is that if you suspect something like this is ongoing, you can be wrong, but if you suspect it, you don't have to be sure about what's occurring. But if something doesn't look right, you need to inform law enforcement. And so that's one thing that the law in the state of Alabama tries to do to protect them. But even that can be inadequate, Roy. If those children suffer damages, they do suffer damages from that type of behavior. And we help those families and that child, or sometimes it's an adult that has experienced those situations earlier in their childhood. We help them recover against the people that are liable or responsible for it.
For those who are just listening in, I have here with me in the studio, and I'm going to have to introduce themselves again, from the Corey Watson Law Firm, which is a plaintiff's law firm here in Birmingham. I have first up Mr. Doug DeLacio, and then again, the other 2 lawyers are
Ryan Lutz and Adam Pittman.
Okay. Well, listen, this week, I was very shocked to find out that there's been another arrest of a teacher for inappropriate sexual relationships with a child. Now, I have a 13-year-old son and a 15-year-old daughter, as I mentioned, and it used to be you could not ever hear of a case like this, but it seems like it's occurring more and more. Have y'all ever had to deal with issues where you're representing people whose children, etc., have been involved in inappropriate sexual relationships with a teacher, and how can something like that happen, etc.? Just, can someone talk a little bit about that?
Hey, Roy, this is Adam. We have, and I have personally been involved in litigation in a situation like that. And as Doug mentioned earlier, it's, first of all, a little unbelievable to think about how something like that can occur, and so many people, especially in a school system where, of course, you trust people to be on the lookout for the health and well-being of your child. And those cases actually present a number of issues. Those cases that involve school system, which is, of course, an arm of the state, there's a lot of complicated legal hurdles in having litigation with the school or with teachers who are in some ways protected by laws of the state, even though they are in that position of caring for your children. For
our listeners out there, what's their legal recourse if the child has had to deal with something like this? Because it seems like it's happening more and more. What are their legal rights?
Well, first of all, in any kind of situation like that, these kind of cases vary dramatically depending on the exact circumstances of the case. So the first thing that you really have to do is talk to a lawyer about a particular situation. There's actually not much that you can say generally about any particular situation because it depends kind of how these things unfold because of the complicated layers of government actors, whether it's from the school board down to people surrounding the teacher, or if a teacher's involved with the student, it gets very complicated.
Yeah, and by the way, for people who may be afraid to call in and ask you questions, but if they did have some information, they did want to get information on what their legal rights are, how can they contact your law firm? Is there a phone number, website, etc.?
Sure, Roy. Our phone number is 328-2200, and we can always help someone get to the right people that can help them.
328-2200. And the website is?
It's CoreyWatsonLaw.com.
Make sure you spell out the Corey part.
Sure. CoreyWatson Law, LAW.com.
Okay. High school graduation is coming up. All right. And a lot of big parties, people wanting to know, if their parents host a party, some parents would rather have their kids drinking at their own house and out about in town. But I've heard of cases where a parent who's served alcohol and their child and then other children are coming and they get in trouble. Talk about that. I mean, that's not a good idea, is it?
No, not at all.
And unfortunately, you hear of that happening a lot.
You sure do. And part of that, I think you might recall, there was a case in Shelby County a few years ago.
Yes.
And then one I'm familiar with in Mountain Brook.
And wasn't that, for people who aren't familiar with exactly what happened?
Here's what I remember happening in the case in Shelby County. A parent allowed a lot of teenagers to come back to their home after like a prom situation or a party and allowed people to drink there.
And these were underage.
They sure were. And the legal age for drinking alcohol or consuming alcohol in the state of Alabama is 21 years old. So
these are high school kids?
They were high school kids.
Wow.
Yeah. And what makes it so difficult to understand is a lot of people say, well, if they're my children, I want them drinking at my home. And I can understand and respect that. But part of the reason isn't just because you want to prevent children from having fun drinking alcohol. What a parent's doing in that situation is committing a crime themselves. And if you strip yourself from the notion that I'll let my children do what I want, there's a reason, a fundamental reason why we don't allow children to drink. And that is because we don't know. Medicine and science hadn't caught up with what we know about the way a brain develops in a child that age. If it were okay for children to drink, then we would allow them to drink. But during brain development, it can harm a child's brain. So part of the reason is to protect their health. And also, of course, drinking and driving. We could do a whole show on that, Roy, but the problems that causes involve everybody, not just the person that's drinking themselves, but that puts us all at danger.
Well, I understand also y'all do a lot of work with all the automobile accidents. I mean, we've had a lot of that. If you got insurance, you're probably going to get reimbursed for the damage for your car or medical bills, what have you. But talk about when it comes to when it's a good time to file a lawsuit, because that I see a lot of that as well. I mean, what are the parameters, legal parameters when you're involved in an accident? Sure.
Let me share with you what sort of happens in an automobile accident. One of the reasons that people purchase insurance is to protect themselves if they've hit somebody. And what we expect out of people is, like myself, I purchase insurance so that if I cause somebody else an injury, they defend me and protect me against them. That's the reason I have it. Everybody in this room has it. But what we've noted in the last few years is that when someone has an accident, the insurance company isn't really forthcoming with trying to resolve it and pay them for the injuries they've sustained. So what we have to do oftentimes is we'll open a case up. Someone gets involved in an accident, and it's someone else's fault. Well, usually we'll notify that person's insurance company, and then we'll start some sort of dialogue between us and them. They'll write us. They'll tell us they'll ask for medical records related to our client's injuries. And then at some point we'll say they're through treating. That means a doctor has released them and said, you're as good as you're going to get based on the injuries you suffered. And then we'll usually make a demand on that insurance company. They step into the defendant's shoes at that time. And what happens next, Roy, is oftentimes they will offer you something that's offensive, a very low amount. not near enough to compensate the person for the injuries they've sustained.
Yeah. Plus the pain and suffering.
Absolutely. And pain and suffering and any other additional aggravation they have. But the main thing we do is at that point in time we have to make a decision. Do we need to file a lawsuit and litigate against this company because they're not being fair with the offer they're making? So typically we give them some time. You try to negotiate. If you can't do it, then you file a lawsuit. Mm-hmm. And then that begins the litigation process.
Ryan, I wanted to ask you this question here. Y'all remember a couple of weeks ago we had this big pile up on I-459 and I-20. I think it was real icy weather. Ice. A lot of times people thought they say, don't get out on the roads. It's too icy, too dangerous, etc. Well, when bad weather is a factor in a wreck, I mean, can the weather be to blame? An issue like that. How do you handle something like that?
That's a great question, Roy. As Doug alluded to earlier, he talked about negligence and about a person's duty, and that's a duty of care. We all have a duty of care to be careful to do, drive on the interstate, and you have that duty no matter what the weather is like. Mm-hmm. So, for example, in a situation like that was presented the other week with bad weather, you would have a duty to drive if you have to drive carefully, and that would mean going slower. That would mean taking possibly different roads, mm-hmm. And certainly if it's icy and it's icy, mm-hmm. you shouldn't be on the road. Yeah. And you can certainly be held liable for any accidents that occur. Even though you do, even though you are following the speed limit, you can still be liable for those accidents.
I know you mentioned that you and Adam both deal a lot with class actions, what have you. Tell a little bit about that. How does that process work when it comes to class actions? Whichever one of you want to talk about it.
Sure, Roy. Class actions. A class action again is a vehicle that allows a lot of smaller claims to be pulled together such that it makes sense for lawyers to take on a case.
I mean, a prime example was it which auto companies was it that had a lot of wrecks related to some faulty product? I cannot remember which one it was, but that's a prime example.
Well, yeah, right now there's a big recall, the Takata airbags, and a lot of
which company was that?
It was Takata, okay. And they manufactured airbags for just about every automobile.
What was happening with the airbags?
The airbags had when they deployed, they had shrapnel in it, and they were actually the shrapnel was causing serious injuries and death to people, and so they had to recall. It was 40, 50, 60 million cars, and a class action device is something that would allow a consumer to get money back for purchasing a car that they wouldn't have purchased had they known that the airbag was going to be defective.
Gotcha. Drug recalls, drug warnings. You see those on TV all the time. Doug, talk about that. I mean, you see these TV commercials about the warnings, about side effects. And it's amazing. I can't remember what the commercial was, but I saw a commercial about this particular drug. And then at the very end, they said, if you take this particular drug, it could cause this, it could cause that. And it always seems to be like an after effect. Seems like the drug companies are warning patients about every possible side effect. Talk about that.
They sure are, but let me share with you, Roy, a couple times, some of my friends will be in a social setting, and they'll kind of joke me and kid me that those drug companies do those warnings like that because of the lawyers. And what I always tell them is, actually, what they're doing is they're trying to immunize themselves against the lawyers. Yeah. By putting those warnings out there.
Well, they knew it had side effects.
It covers them. They know it, and they're telling you they know it. And so what they do, though, by doing that, and then a doctor recommends it, most people in this country will do almost anything their doctor recommends, particularly people that are more in the rural areas. They've trusted a doctor their whole life.
Well, what are your rights in a case like that?
It becomes very, very difficult because that warning is such a high level of protection for a drug company that it makes it difficult. Now, we take those companies on, Roy.
They put out a warning, and because they said a warning, then they can get off.
Yeah, usually. Now, we work very hard to get around it, and we're very successful at doing so. But just generally, that's something that they've developed and gotten protection through legislature that helps them in those situations.
Wow.
And like I said, though, I don't want to deflect anybody that might need help with that, because that's what we do. And they're constantly tweaking the warnings. If it becomes a little bit more helpful to them, they'll change it.
Gotcha. Well, you guys are playing this law firm. I mean, tell people a little bit how it works, because some people may not have the money to pay up front, but tell about how it works.
That's exactly right, Roy. The whole wide spectrum, from a simple car wreck up to a catastrophic injury. We discussed that case a few minutes ago about the Days Inn fire. We had to hire experts to prove how that fire started, where it started, and why it started. And that could be very difficult if a family individually had to pay lawyers by the hour to do something like that.
And most people don't have that kind of money up front.
It would be prohibitive. It would be prohibitive for most people that have, that are generally above, average income.
So how does it work? Say a person, they don't really have much money, like the Gate City family. We know that's a very, very poor area.
Sure.
And, they don't have the money to hire a lawyer up front and all that. How does it work?
Roy, we do that on a contingency fee. In other words,
people what that is.
Our firm will advance expenses for the people, and we only charge them if we collect for them. So I always tell people, it puts us in a position where we must win our case to get paid. So when we sign a client up and help that client, we are very vested in their case. We're going to do everything we can to win, because we're in the boat with them. We must win to recover. It's the most pure thing I can say at law, that we're so confident in helping people that we're willing to put our own money and time on the line. It's more of a philosophy than it is a job.
Gotcha. I think we got about 5 minutes left. We said we got 2 minutes left. So remind people, phone number, website, if they have any questions, how they can call you to get information.
They're welcome to call us at Corey Watson. Our telephone number is 328-2200. At any point in time, they're welcome to call us. We'll help them get to somebody that can help them if it's something we don't do. And I'll say,
what's the area code for people maybe listening online?
205-328-2200.
Website, and make sure you spell out the Corey part.
Sure. It's CoreyWatsonLaw.com. It's CoreyWatsonLaw.com.
All right, we got about a minute left. Closing remarks for anybody?
Yeah, I'll add to that you can go to our website and you can see a lot of different cases that we handle, and it does it's a broad spectrum of cases, and so if you do visit the website, you can look at the type of cases that we handle, and if you don't see the type of case that you have, you can call us and we can answer your question, and if we don't do that kind of law, we can direct you to someone who does.
Well, listen, I've enjoyed this. As a matter of fact, I've enjoyed it so much. I'm going to get y'all back on probably at the end of May, and I want to talk more in depth because it seems we don't know what type of cases are going to happen between now and then, but it seems like every week you hear of another horrible accident or what have you. Listen, thank y'all for joining us again. There was Mr. Doug Delaccio,
Ryan Lutz, and Adam Pittman.
The Corey Watson Law Firm here in Birmingham, and thank y'all for being on BizTalk. And if you would like to be considered as a guest or be an ad partner with BizTalk, call me at 205-572-1359 or email me at BizTalkWithRoy@gmail.com. Listen, I look forward to having our next conversation related to legal matters with the Corey Watson Law Firm at the end of May.
Thank you, Roy.
Thank you, Roy.
Thank y'all for joining us, everybody.
Now at the Home Depot,